I know exactly what's going on with this question. They're tricking you. They're really trying to trick you. They know how you think about punctuation, and they are really just designing a very excellent series of traps to get you. And what's going to save us is if we truly understand how commas work, how punctuation works. This is a piece of cake. So let's just go through the answers here. First and foremost, I would be drawn to choice C. That colon is a very easy test that I can perform. We have to remember that in order to use a colon, we need to have a complete sentence before, and then we can have, whatever we want afterwards. Maybe a sentence, maybe just a list, maybe just even one word. So we would want to check, is the thing that comes before this a complete sentence? So that would be basically all of this up to participants. The researchers then asked the participants. Now, technically, grammatically, that is a complete sentence, but if we look beyond it, we see that the sentence or the idea doesn't actually end, it continues. The researchers then asked the participants to rate on a scale of 1 to 7 their likelihood of purchasing the product, right? That clause continues. So while, yes, we could strip it all away and say that that part that's in yellow is just its own sentence, the fact that we're adding on this extra stuff and it's continuing that sentence means we cannot use a colon here because a colon would basically function like a period. We can't have half an idea on one side of a sentence and the other on a completely new sentence. It doesn't work. So that gets rid of choice C. And so you really need to be able to find those advanced punctuation marks and apply these set rules. We know how they work, and thus they are very predictable. And so that gets to the main point about what we're really supposed to be memorizing here, is that punctuation is really a way for us to note the sentence structure. So a lot of times that comes down to what is a complete sentence and what is not, but it also comes down to where does our sentence get shifted, changed, interrupted. That's what commas mostly do. And so that's how you want to approach the rest of these choices. Now, again, I said there's traps. There's lots of things going on here. Let's look at choice A. This is a great trap. What they're trying to do is trap you with this comma right here next to asked. Because I know that you have seen before, and it's in your brain, that you're supposed to put a comma before a quote, right? So, Sally said, I'm hungry, right? This would be a good example where we would put a comma kind of after a word like said or asked and before a quote, the thing that Sally said. But there's no quote here. There's no asking of an actual sentence, right? There's no quotation mark. So this is not going to apply. This rule is only for actual quotations. So doesn't apply here. The thought continues. The researchers then asked the participants, right? There's no pause there. There's no break in the logic or flow of that sentence. That is one continuous thought. And so a comma there is not a good idea. You're going to break up something that doesn't need to be broken up. So that gets rid of A. Now, the rest of the sentence is very long. And I know what's happening. We gravitate towards something maybe like B too because we're like, oh, well, we got to put a comma somewhere. This is too long. There's got to be commas. And you guys do this in your writing all the time. Whenever I grade my students' essays, it's always the same uses of a comma. You don't know what they do, but you know that long sentences tend to have commas. So you just kind of throw commas in because you're like, oh, this seems like a good point. I've talked for a long time without a comma. I should probably put a comma. But no, there's rules. There's rules to this stuff. And so we have to think, what would this comma in B be doing? Where would the sentence shift? Well, if we didn't have any commas before that, then all of this up to 7 would be a continuous thought, right? With no breaks, and it is. The researchers then asked the participants to rate on a scale of 1 to 7, but the thought doesn't end there, it continues. Their likelihood of purchasing the product. This comma right here is useful. It is doing what a comma is supposed to do. It's showing us that we're going to add on some extra stuff to our sentence. All of this is an extra clause. It's not necessary. That comma there after product, that could just be a period. We could end the sentence right there. The researchers then asked the participants to rate on a scale of 1 to 7 their likelihood of purchasing the product. Complete thought. Complete sentence. We could put a period there. But since we're adding on some extra, we've used a comma. There's no reason for a comma after 7 because that that piece there, their likelihood of purchasing the product, that's like an essential piece of what we're trying to say. It's not something we could just leave out. It would be weird to just say, the researchers then asked the participants to rate on a scale of 1 to 7. Rate what? Right? We need the what. And so that's why it continues. And that's why all this stuff in yellow is one complete thought. And so that means we're going to go with choice D here. There's no reason for a comma. It's fine as it is because there's no clear break in the sentence. Now, personally, if I were writing this sentence myself for an essay, I would use commas. I would put commas. Let's see if I can show it here. Where they put one here, so this one's good. This one here, I would put, and I would put another one after 7. So basically, let me change the highlighting to reflect that. Basically, the yellow is still kind of the main sentence, but now I'm going to insert an extra little pink thing. The researchers then asked the participants to rate their likelihood of purchasing the product. Notice how that piece, on a scale of 1 to 7, can be lifted out of the sentence, and it does feel kind of like extra information. Now, that's just a personal choice, though, and that happens with some punctuation marks, is that it's not really a set rule that we need to have a comma in a particular place, but that the author is making a choice to include one or not. And so the SAT is really sneaky about this. Most of the punctuation questions that you encounter have just one possible answer. There's only one way to punctuate what they give you, and you got to do what the answer is, right? But other cases, they're messing with you a little bit because they know it's kind of iffy. But there's still only one answer. And so the mistake that a lot of people make is they try to imagine what they would do for punctuation, ignoring the fact that there are only 4 options here. So our job is not to say what is the best way to punctuate a sentence. It's to say, of the 4 ways that they gave us, which one is the only one that's acceptable. And so you may find that your way of doing it isn't a choice. And so that's why it's better to work backwards like I did here and kind of evaluate what we're given and see if they match up with the rules rather than try to come up with our own version of things. It's just sometimes our version isn't there. This is really tricky, this question. It just captures a lot about the mistakes that people tend to make with punctuation, the way they think about it as just like a random thing that we do when sentences get long, the way that they think about it as their own opinion about what gets punctuated instead of just evaluating what's there. There's a lot in this question, so maybe you want to come back to this one as a review of some of the more subtle ways that the SAT tests punctuation.